The U.S. military is running low on certain weapon systems and munitions because we're sending so much over to Eastern Europe. We're going to kind of walk through some of these weapon systems and some of these missile systems that we are running low on, so that you can kind of see that for yourself in the video. A little bit more of a deep dive, but we'll move through it relatively quickly and walk you through kind of what we're missing and what we're going to be really short on if we get into a major power struggle with someone like China. Less than a week's worth of precision-guided missiles is the top line item that is really, really scary. Let's jump into it. Now, this video is sponsored by Genesis Gold, and in these times of uncertainty, if you want to move your money out of stocks and bonds, which is probably a good idea, over into something more physical like physical gold, physical silver, or physical platinum, you can talk to Jonathan and his team over at Genesis Gold. Their information is down in the description down below. Give them a free call, and right now if you get on board in January, you actually get some free silver along with a eligible transfer. So, in a study that was just produced this week by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, they determined that the United States is not adequately prepared for a protracted conventional war with a major power like China. Basically, what they did was they did some wargaming, but then they also were taking statistics directly from the ground in Eastern Europe, seeing like what kind of munitions are being used, how much they're being used, how many they're going through per hour, per day. You know, they have so many launchers and so many artillery systems, and how much ammo they use to destroy how many tanks and how many infantry and all that kind of stuff like that. And they're just kind of crunching those numbers and like, if we got into a major power struggle with China, what would that look like ammunition-wise, logistically-wise? And they are determining that we are significantly underprepared for this. Particularly, as I mentioned before, precision-guided long-range missiles. So these would be the missiles that we would be using to attack landing ships in the Taiwanese Strait if they were to attack Taiwan. We would be using long-range missiles. And so we've seen Russia basically just running out of long-range missiles. And they've been buying Iranian drones and that kind of stuff. But if the United States doesn't have the ability to rapidly produce these things, which it doesn't, we have an industrial base that's designed to support like a low-intensity conflict like Afghanistan or Iraq, where we use some weapons, but we're not using like constant and tons of weapons as much as we can get our hands on. We don't have a manufacturing system designed for that. Whereas we're seeing China is developing that exact type of manufacturing system. They have thousands of ballistic missiles positioned directly across the Taiwanese Strait. Thousands. And I think we're a little short of saying tens of thousands at this point, but it's last I checked, it was something like 8,000 or 9,000 missiles pointed at Taiwan directly across the strait. And of course, they have their ship missiles, ballistic missiles that they have positioned all over the country that can launch up in the air and then come down on an aircraft carrier or other large ships that are semi-guided to bring them in to take out ships. So they've been building up their missile systems, whereas the United States does not have nearly as many ballistic missiles, does not have that capability. We have, of course, nuclear weapons, but you know, whether we use those in a conventional war at the outset is really the question. So using these war games, using these logistics and saying, well, how many launchers and how much ammunition are they going through in a day? They determined that we have less than a week worth of long-range precision-guided missiles to attack targets in the Taiwanese Strait or in that theater, basically. So that's our biggest weak point. We're giving too much to Eastern Europe right now of those type of weapons, including the HIMARS system. We're also having a shortage of 155 millimeter artillery shells. So they're already starting to ramp up production. They're going to 5x the production of 155 millimeter artillery shells in the next coming years, but will that be too soon or too late? That's a whole question, but we're sending a whole lot of those 155 millimeter shells over to Eastern Europe. Basically what's happening is the United States is providing the weapon systems and from the weapon stockpiles that we have, because Europe, they've been so under budget on beefing up their weapon systems and their stockpiles that they don't have any excess weapon systems to give to Eastern Europe, really. They're giving some high-profile weapon systems, but when it comes to ammunition and when it comes to missile stockpiles and stuff like that, the European countries have been cutting their defense budgets so severely and just basically waiting for the United States to protect them that they just don't have any to give. And so the United States has basically been giving for the United States as well as the rest of Europe. The rest of Europe's like, yeah, we'll give some money. So we'll buy the weapon systems off of the United States and then give them to Eastern Europe. And so that's kind of what's been going on. And so the U.S. stockpiles of munitions has been dropping rapidly. Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. So these are the hand-mounted, shoulder-mounted, personal anti-missile systems that were used so effectively, of course, in Afghanistan against Russian helicopters. They were designed kind of for that, and they were used effectively there. Of course, they've been upgraded until where we are right now. But those missiles, shoulder-mounted missiles, we're running low on those. Anti-radiation missiles. Now, I know that sounds like it's used to take a nuclear power plant, but radiation, of course, is any kind of emitted radiation. Light is radiation, and particularly radar is radiation. So basically, these missiles are actually designed to hone in on radar signatures. So when they have radar installations and stuff like that, you fire these missiles, they go in and they seek out any kind of radar installations, whether they be, usually they're ground-mounted ones. So they're attacking ground-mounted. So when you're taking out air defense systems, you really need these to kind of hone in on those radar signatures. Or once they get a radar signature, it locks in on that location. So even if they turn off the radar, the missile still knows where that was and goes in and destroys it. So those are extremely important when dealing with a near peer like China, where they're going to have all these air defense systems in the zone that we're trying to attack. We need to take out those radar systems in order to attack those grounds installations and such. Also, we're running out of surface-to-surface missiles. Now, these are like the HIMARS systems, where we're just providing a lot of these munitions to Eastern Europe, and we just aren't manufacturing them quickly enough. These are usually GPS guided, so targeted, and then they're not just dumb 155 millimeter artillery shells, they are guided munitions. Javelin anti-tank missiles. We've been talking a lot about those over in Eastern Europe, using these to take out tanks and everything. They're the shoulder-mounted anti-tank missiles. Well, we're running low on the Javelin anti-tank missiles, which our soldiers would absolutely need a whole bunch of those in order to get into, especially when you talk about someone like China, where they have all these cheap tanks. They have lots and lots of cheap tanks. You would need lots and lots of anti-tank missiles to take out those lots and lots of tanks. And so we're seeing across the board that this is, we're depleting our stockpiles. Now, Defense Department folks are like, oh, there's no problem, you know, we're not actually giving more than what we need to. But of course, these are the same people that kind of make all sorts of judgment calls, you know. These are the people that when we get into a major conflict with someone else, they would go, oh, who could know? Who could have known? Well, we have the experts who actually did the studies, and they're saying we're super low. We're super low on a lot of things, particularly guided munitions. We don't have enough. And the Defense Department, of course, they're just being pressured from above politically. We need more weapons to give to Eastern Europe. We need more weapons. Well, we could give those weapons over there. And other people are like, we shouldn't give that because that's our strategic stockpile. Who's going to get promoted and who's going to get fired? The person who says, let's just give all those weapons. And, oh, yeah, we have plenty. We have enough. That's fine. Versus the people who are, you know, actually trying to protect American interests, because how does that go on the southern border? People trying to protect the U.S. interests tend to get fired, demoted, whereas the people are like, oh, there's no problem at the border, no problem whatsoever, we're fine. Those are the people that get promoted because they're politically saying what the politicians above them want them to say. And so it's super scary that the Defense Department is getting so politicized, and they're basically emptying the vaults of weapon systems, and you can't help but see Russia smiling from ear to ear and China doing the same thing, watching the United States bleed itself dry of munitions before a major campaign like in around the Taiwan area. This just puts us in a really bad place. Friends, I don't really believe in us meddling everywhere in the world. I believe that Taiwan should be required to stand on its own. I think that Taiwan has not spent nearly enough money on defense. They've been relying on the United States up till recently. Just recently, they've started to take the threat more seriously, and they've started to invest in defense. Up till now, it's just been one big pork barrel project there. They've been basically buying whatever excess stuff the United States doesn't want and buying that stuff to use, and just to make the United States happy so that the United States will come defend them. And Europe's been doing the same thing. They've just been like not spending money on defense because they're like, the United States will protect us. Everyone in the world just seems to think that the United States is going to protect them. And what they don't realize is that at the end of the day, our adversaries realize that much of the world is dependent upon the United States to protect them. And while the United States is super powerful and has a lot of military, do we have enough military to protect the entire world and shield the entire world from all threats out there? And the answer is no. No. I mean, policing works as long as the population is like generally on board with the policing. But once the world starts turning, once the neighborhood starts turning where they're against the police, there's just not enough police. Once you start doing the numbers on how many police officers there are versus how many citizens there are, you realize real fast that there are not enough police to govern an ungovernable people. And the same thing in the world, as we're seeing more and more countries, these BRICS countries are saying, United States, we're kind of done with this whole thing. And we are going to go our own way, and you're not going to be able to stop us. And if we want to take over that country next to us, we're just going to take over them, and you can't do anything to stop us. And the world just kind of needs to figure that out for themselves, that they need to protect themselves. That the United States may be able to help, but the United States is not going to come and protect everybody. I've always just kind of said we should just give Taiwan nuclear weapons. That would kind of solve that, I think. I don't think that Taiwan would ever use those offensively, but the fact is that if they had some nuclear weapons to hide under and to use as a last resort, I think that China would have a very long, serious consideration before attacking Taiwan. But United States really should be protecting the United States, just like other countries should be protecting themselves. And that's kind of my opinion. I'm an anti-interventionist. I believe that, we should be sending humanitarian relief. We should be sending missionaries and aid workers to most places. And if they want to engage in warfare with other countries, or if they need to, they should be buying their own weapon systems. They should be protecting themselves. And they should be forming alliances with nearby countries. But why the United States has a vested interest in Eastern Europe is kind of beyond me, because we're all the way on the other side of the world. And, we can't protect our southern border. Why in the world are we protecting other countries' borders? That's my thoughts on the thing. You can let me know what you think. I know everyone has different opinions on everything, but it's scary to see that the United States is not going to have enough weapons and munitions to protect ourselves from a major war, that we seem to be so dead set on dragging ourselves into. All right, folks, if you found this video useful, helpful, informative, maybe not encouraging, you might want to check out another video from me right over here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you later. Steve Poplar out.